Good morning and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant, and welcome to another episode of our weekly roundup. Uh, don't have much to talk about, to be very honest, because there has been very little development this week. We expected some draws, did not happen, but then that was because of the ongoing technical glitch. We'll talk about that in a bit. The PNP draws pretty much stayed. uh, I wouldn't say that they were quiet, but there were a few, but nothing drastic happened there. But as and how the sentiments amongst people are being noticed, so we are hearing more and more people now talking less and less about Canada, more negativity around the whole aspect of Canada and Canadian immigration. So we're going to talk about all of that in today's episode. Stay tuned as we roll further, starting with, oh, we didn't even do that. Hold on. So, starting with today's presentation, and I don't have it here. Hold on for a minute. Should be uploaded in a bit. But before we get on to that, technical glitch. So, what happened was, I think it was an update that IRCC did in Express Entry. Because of that update, which was a couple of weeks back, lot of applications went into in progress, or even the profiles, express entry profiles went into in progress. Why? Because they created another new field so that you can enter your postal code, especially for the Canadian addresses. Now there is a school of thought as to why this new introduction is being made, and we're going to talk about the school of thought. Can be very interesting as we move forward. This has been discussed in the 5 pillars of immigration that was launched by Sean Fraser. I mean, if you keep in touch with all these things, then you would know what I'm talking about. This was a document issued way back this year, when they were talking about 5 pillars of transition to permanent residence. This came in, actually, it wasn't even this year. It came late last year. This was in response to the motion 44 M44, right? I'm not sure if you remember about that. So there was some talks during that document as to what they're proposing to do in terms of immigration and the transition plans. So we're going to talk about that as well, because that can be very interesting. But as far as this glitch is concerned, so they required you to enter the postal codes for Canada. You could enter the postal codes, that was fine, but what was happening is, in your dependents, your spouse, your partner, your children, in their addresses, the postal code was not appearing, but it was a requirement, and therefore the profiles could not be completed. Therefore, a lot of applications were not being, people were not able to submit their applications. IRCC acknowledged that there was a technical glitch. Then after a few days back, they came back and said that the technical glitch has been resolved. This is what we heard on Thursday. And again, day after that, we realized again that the technical glitch indeed has not been resolved, because for children, dependent children, this problem continued. So as of right now, while it has resolved for most of you, for some of you, it might still be a problem. So as I had mentioned to you earlier, if you are facing this issue in your applications, and if you are on a deadline to submit your applications, please do not wait. Change the country of your child, of your dependent child, to your home country, whatever that might be, whatever your country of citizenship is. Do not mention it as Canada. And once you change that, your application should be fine. Add a letter of explanation explaining the technical glitch and saying that because of this, you have made this change so that you could proceed with your application. So that way you should be able to get done and hopefully submit your application. Otherwise, you might miss out on the deadline, and then we know what can happen when you miss out on deadlines. All right, so let's get with our presentation as we have it here. All right. Obviously, as usual, starting with the quote of the week: life is like a camera. Focus on what's important. Capture the good times, and if things don't work out, just take another shot. This is a very famous quote by Ziad K. Abdul Noor. Such an incredible statement there. Life is like a camera. So many times we just take everything for granted, right? We want everything now. We want everything yesterday. We want, we don't have any patience anymore. And obviously our expectations from our own life, from our own efforts is so huge, and we obviously get demotivated. We basically fall apart in some cases when things don't go our way. But if you treat life like a camera, focus on what is important, capture the good times. Of course, you will obviously have the good and the bad. Life is like that. There is nobody out there who has it only good. You will have a mix of both. You can always find a balance there sometimes. And if things don't work out, then just take another shot. Learn from the negatives. It's not that the negatives will not teach you. Negatives will definitely, there'll always be a teaching there. Learn from the negatives and then take another shot, and then again it starts all over again. And that, if you apply this, you will always realize that there is so much. One, you would keep learning, and number two, you will also be able to capture tons and tons of good times and moments as well. This is the Immigration Weekly Roundup. Stay up to date on Canadian immigration news and trends. We will start with the PNP updates, then we will go with the other news, and then finally we'll come to your question and answers. Please hold back your questions. I can see a lot of people are posting questions, but we will want you to just hold that back for the time being. PNP draws. British Columbia on 16th of November invited more than 219 candidates in the most recent PNP draw. And among the 5 draws, the largest was the general draw, inviting 116 candidates from the semi-skilled, international graduate, entry-level, and semi-skilled streams. The minimum scores were ranging from 94 to 115, depending on the stream. They also held the first targeted draw for the construction occupation. We'll talk about this in a bit, and the minimum score for this was 75. The remaining 4 draws targeted the skilled worker, international graduates, the early childhood educator and assistants. The score was, the invitations were 59, healthcare got 32, other priority occupations were less than 5, and the score was only 60. Again, as a reminder for BCPNP, if you are interested, then you need a job offer, unless you're applying under the international postgraduate stream. Okay, in Manitoba, I'm not sure why the orange bar has come down, but anyways, Manitoba on 16th of November invited 301 candidates to apply for nomination. 4 draws were held for these candidates in 3 streams. Skilled workers in Manitoba, 100 candidates with a score of 809. That is, to be very honest, very high. To apply for general draw, this was a general draw. And then the second draw was for skilled workers. That was occupation specific, and it considered a range of NOCs, again, healthcare, education, and home care. The remaining draws saw 61 candidates being invited from international education stream and 48 from skilled worker overseas, with a minimum score of 721. 721, to be very honest, is still very high, but it's obviously better than 809, right? Now, Prince Edward Island, on 16th of November, they invited 141 candidates in their PNP draw. 134 was labor and express entry candidates, and they also employed, they conducted a small draw for the business work permit entrepreneur candidates. 7 candidates were invited, and they needed a score of only 80. So if you are interested in business immigration, if you are looking to immigrate to Canada through the entrepreneur route, Prince Edward Islands is pretty interesting because their scores are usually on the lower side of things compared to British Columbia, compared to Ontario, compared to the other provinces where the scores can be quite high. So if you're looking a doorway into Canada, set up a business in Prince Edward Islands. Always remember the business immigration routes, the entrepreneur immigration streams are normally, you first file an expression of interest. If you get invited, you complete your application. If it is approved, you will get a work permit. After you get the work permit, you will come to Canada. You will set up the business as per your business performance agreement. And only after that, once the audit has been completed, you will get a nomination, and only then you can apply for PR. It sounds like a long process, but hey, you are in Canada, right? You're already starting your business. You're already working towards settling your life. So everything else is just a process then. Prince Edward Islands has invited 2,527 candidates through these 2 streams in the past 12 months. Alberta. Now, Alberta, obviously, though the draw was conducted on the 9th of November, they obviously published this information quite late. They invited 16 express entry candidates in the dedicated healthcare pathway with Alberta job offer stream, requiring a score of only 300. Now, as we have seen over a period of time, Alberta's program has become more and more complex in the sense, like, First, it was just having a score of 300, and anybody could have been invited depending on your NOC code being in priority. Now they have the dedicated healthcare pathway, then they need the Alberta job offer stream. So basically, not only do you need a job offer, it has to be in a specific occupation, and then you get invited into the healthcare. Similarly, they have the accelerated tech pathway. Only candidates who are under the specific tech NOC codes have a job offer from the employer who are under the NAICS code, only they get invited. And then you have the family connection stream, whereby if you have a family member who's a sibling or a parent in Canada, in Alberta, and your occupation is a priority occupation, then you get invited. So Alberta is becoming a bit more complex, I would say, as it used to be. Other news, we have some other news as well. Let's talk about that. British Columbia is prioritizing 25 new occupations for immigration. Now, for these 25 new immigration, for these 25 new NOCs or occupations, they held the first targeted round of invitations, and they invited only 12 candidates. Only 12. The score was 75, and these targeted invitations to apply are being sent to workers in certain occupations who also have a BC, British Columbia trades qualification. Without trades qualification, obviously, you will not be able to work in those trade occupations, and therefore just defeats the purpose. The occupations included electricians, plumbers, carpenters, welders, concrete finishers, and all other trade essentials in the construction sector. This is the list of the NOC codes, if at all you are interested. So if you have work experience in these NOC codes, you have a job offer in these NOC codes, you have a trade certification in British Columbia in these NOC codes, then make sure you have an active profile on the British Columbia PNP system so that you can get invited. And as I said, the score was only 75. As we move forward, it will probably come down a bit further. But I'm not sure if you have realized, you see, with most of the provinces, whether it is Manitoba, who has now been inviting healthcare and trades category, British Columbia inviting trades category and construction, Ontario was already inviting trade category. And then federal level, IRCC has a trade category program as well. Can you see how much push it is? It is sort of, it's all flowing from all sides. The push is now towards very, very specific occupations. It is no longer free for all. It's no longer general draws having so much of advantage. It is now becoming very, very evident that if you do not have work experience in certain occupations, which are obviously priority occupations, then you might find it very, very difficult unless your scores can stay 500 plus, because that's how it is looking like. But we're going to talk about that in a bit. In the other news, of course, the Federation of Ministers responsible for immigration, the FMRI, they held their meeting in Canada, of course, and Mark Miller obviously discussed with them the whole immigration plans from 2024 to 2026, and they obviously did not agree on so many things, but they did agree to work together. So hopefully by working together, they will reduce duplication among federal and provincial economic class immigration programs and reduce processing times. I'm not sure how they are planning to do that, but when they have, this is like ministers in any country, right? They all meet together, they all disagree, but then they all agree to work together, and they come up with these 4-point agenda, 10-point agenda, which obviously rolls down the hill and never to be seen again. But anyways, so just to give you an update about this, these are the main agendas that they agreed upon, that they will be supporting francophone immigration outside Quebec. Well, if this is happening, and this is obviously happening, right? Because it's a clear intent to increase the francophone immigration across Canada outside Quebec. It is in the federal, it is in the provincial, because Ontario has been quite actively inviting French speakers. Saskatchewan gives you 10 additional points. Other provinces so far haven't really gone the way of identifying only francophones or French speakers for their provincial programs. But if all the FMRI group ministers have agreed, then you can see francophone immigration draws being invited from certain other provinces as well. Delivering a more responsive, client-centric economic immigration system, reducing barriers, exploring how governments can work together, considering expanding settlement services, improving integrity, blah, de, blah, de, blah. So yeah, all of that is what happened in this meeting of the ministers. And they obviously discuss the whole new immigration strategy. I do not know what is new about this immigration strategy, because I don't see anything new, except for the fact that there is more category-based draws, which have now become prevalent. Apart from that, there is nothing new, or at least that is what has been indicated here about the immigration strategies. Before we talk about today's main subject, Canadian charm fading away, before that, let's talk about the fact of this technical glitch, and I want to sort of draw your attention to this. So what happened was, last year, Randeep Sarai, who is an MP in British Columbia, he tabled a motion M44, whereby they wanted to give more advantage to people who are in the trades category, transport category, even at the lower language skills level. A lot of people assumed that that was going to be the TR to PR program. Then after a few months, after I think 100 and some 20 days or something, Sean Fraser came back and presented a document called five pillars to transitioning, 5 pillars to transition to PR, something of that sort. So I can always post the link, but if you go back to my older videos, you will find the document there as well. So amongst these 5 pillars, they talked about so many different things. Category-based draws was discussed there. They did indicate that they would want to transition more international students to becoming permanent resident. I haven't seen anything of that sort happening at all. Nothing have been heard. Of course, there was a talk about the municipal nominee program. But there was also, amongst all that documentation, I think it's for 35-40 pages of a document, there was one thing which was mentioned, and that was about regional, or rather encouraging regional immigration, or immigrating, or immigration to other places except the 4 main cities in Canada. 4 main cities being Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Montreal. So obviously there is a big requirement, big need for people to move out of these provinces, or rather for new immigrants who are coming to basically move out of these provinces. So now my very good friend Jatinder, who is also a regulated immigration consultant, he very recently on the Twitter has mentioned the same thing and posted about the same thing. Basically, then the light bulbs went on that this is probably what they are looking to do. They are now, IRCC is now asking you to put your postal codes. What is the need for the postal codes? Why make it a mandatory field? You could have also asked people to put the postal codes next to the city. So now that these postal codes are being required in your application and in your express entry profile, especially in Canadian context of things, does this mean that as we move forward, that IRCC could look to now start looking at inviting people who are in certain postal codes, in certain regions, in certain cities, in certain parts of the country where they would like to promote more immigration towards? It's a thought that people need to consider, right? And therefore, if you still are on the fence thinking, okay, should I move out of Toronto? Should I move out of Ontario? Well, then you should, because in most cases, Ontario's immigration programs or Ontario's PNP programs are not very, very helpful for a lot of people. At the same point of time, Ontario has also made a small change, or rather has discussed, not they haven't made a change. They have discussed a change that is for the international students under the international student job offer stream. They have discussed and they have said that as of right now, in order to be eligible under the international student stream for the job offer, you need to have 2-year program. You need to have you should have studied a 2-year program in Ontario, or and then have a job offer from an employer in an occupation which they then choose as a priority occupation and then invite from that. So now they're saying this requirement of a 2-year program, they are looking, it is under discussion, it hasn't been implemented, they are looking to reduce it to even a 1-year program. So even a 1-year program would become eligible. They probably are doing it because a lot of people are moving away from Ontario. They're moving away to Atlantic provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. So that could be one of the reasons. But the problem is not about people moving away. The problem is that if you are staying in Ontario, and I get so many people who are who book a consultation, who discuss with me, who come to our office, ask the same thing. What are their options? And they are international students who have now gained work experience in Ontario, or are completing their studies in Ontario and are looking for options. In most cases, Ontario does not have too many options in the sense, of course, Ontario has an option. Of course, uh, at the end of the day, they have the maximum, rather the most amount of PNP quotas, right? 16,500 now going to be increased next year again. They do have that quota, but uh, the way Ontario has conducted its draw throughout the 2023, it's very evident that there is a huge focus on very three or only three occupation groups. So you have tech, you have healthcare, and you have trades. That has been the main focus throughout 2023. I see absolutely no reason why they might be looking to change this focus. Considering other provinces are also now moving to these occupation priority occupations. Not only that, Canadian housing crisis is well known by now. I mean, I think all media news channels everywhere, everybody has covered it, that we are going through some housing crisis where more houses need to be built, and in order to build more houses you need more people. More people have to be skilled and have to have experience in building houses and construction and in trades, and therefore this push of bringing in more tradespeople, bringing in more people who have trades background, trade experience into Canada. So you will certainly continue to see more and more trade category draws happening in Ontario. So if you are an international student who's looking to think, okay, what should I do? Where should I go? Ontario. If you have completed your studies in Ontario, then yeah, you can consider going into the trades category, getting work experience of 1 year in trade category, and hopefully after 1 year, you would possibly have a chance with a very low CRS score of even 250, getting invited under the Ontario's under the Ontario's skilled trade category stream. But other than that, in most cases, for most other occupations, if you are from that background, because international student stream is with the express entry, so you don't need a job offer. You just need 1 year of work experience in trades in Ontario. But for other streams, international students who need a job offer, employer job offer stream, these streams, by and large, they need you to have an employer who is eligible. So if it is the employer inside the Toronto GTA area, they need to have a turnover of $1 million, and they also need to have at least 5 employees who are permanent resident citizens. If the employer is outside the Toronto GTA area, they need to have at least $500,000 as their income, as their annual turnover. Plus, they need to have at least 3 employees who are permanent resident citizens. Plus, which is a very big factor, this employer needs to sign and complete and sign the employer form. The employer form is available on the Ontario's website. The employer form, most employers are not very happy to do it. I honestly do not know why, because most of the information that they want to complete is pretty much available. But yes, most of them do not like to do it. Most of the big MNCs, big corporates, big multinationals, they don't like to complete it. Their legal department doesn't allow them to complete that form. Why? Because in this particular form, they have to disclose their financial data and employee data. Not too much, but they have to sort of give that information. So most of these companies just do not give you this employer form. Without this employer form, you will not be eligible in the employer job offer stream or in the international student stream for the job offer. So what do you do? With so many of you out there, obviously, again, these streams are also points based, and because they are points based means you're always competing with somebody else. Obviously, at this point of time, there are about 900,000 international students in Ontario. So imagine all these 900,000 international students at some point of time will complete their education, will graduate, and will then be competing with the labor market, which is already in Canada, also looking for the same employers who can give them. Can you imagine what the competition is going to look like? So what is the option? The option is you either move to the Atlantic provinces. Now, mind you, when I say Atlantic provinces, and I've been saying this for a long time, it's not like it's easy in Atlantic provinces either. It's pretty tough, because most people who were smart, who understood the whole process, realized that moving to these Atlantic regions will be easier, because you can move there, find a job, have them sponsor your PNP application, probably support you for your application for AIP, Atlantic Immigration Program. As of right now, going is pretty tough in Atlantic region as well, because finding an employer, very difficult. So what do? Then you can go to Manitoba. Work there for 1 year, because you're coming from outside the province. You studied outside the province, so you get negative 200 marks in the Manitoba's scoring chart. And you get your 1 year of experience in Manitoba, and then you get a job offer, and then you apply for Manitoba PNP. Or you go to Saskatchewan. Now, Saskatchewan has a great program. They have a program for people who can work in Saskatchewan for 6 months, get work experience in Saskatchewan for 6 months with the same employer. The employer then gives you JAL as in job approval letter. These acronyms, I tell you, sometimes they make you feel like wow, right? Yeah, so they have to give you this JAL, and once they give you this JAL, then you will be able to apply for a nomination, and then you will be able to get through with your permanent residence, or you go to Alberta. But in Alberta, the Alberta opportunity stream would not be for you then, because you might not be eligible because you did not study in an Albertan institution. What you will then need to do is go to the Alberta rural area, then find an employer, then get a job offer, then apply for the endorsement, then. So as you can imagine how this is looking like. But if you're in Ontario, and as I said, Ontario is looking to make this change, then hopefully some of you will get advantage, but most of you probably should start aligning your programs to go with trades or healthcare or tech. Tech, again, another issue there with the STEM category draw not happening. But by and large, this is what's happening. So first point being your postal codes, which can become very, very important as we move forward. We have to see how that plays out. And for Ontario, if you're still in Ontario, maybe you need to start reviewing your options to see if even after Ontario giving out 16,500 invitations to different people, would you still have a chance, or you would have to need to move? So this is how it looks like. That was a small snapshot of how things are to come. Now, today's main discussion topic, fading Canadian charm. Now, is it really fading, or is it news channels or media outlets just creating a bit of a blitz about? In the very recent past, obviously, there has been an increase in a negative sentiment towards immigrants, or towards increasing immigration within the Canadian citizens, population, residents, whatever you want to call that. They don't see immigration as beneficial as it was touted as being as earlier by the Liberals, right? Because Liberals have been, so when Liberals came into power, the immigration quota was only 265,000 annually, right? And they have increased it, and they have increased it, and they have increased it. Now we are looking at 500,000 quotas for immigration. But what they have done is for 2024, and then 2025 is 500,000. 2024 is 485. 2025 is 500,000, and then they stabilized it at 2026 to 500,000. They obviously are listening, and they are obviously feeling the sentiment of general public, and they don't really want to ruffle any more feathers at this point of time. Their poll ratings is at all-time low. They're not looking to sort of create a bigger mess for themselves that they already have. And at this point of time, there is also a bigger issue, which is of the housing crisis, as I was just talking to you earlier. Now, this housing crisis, earlier in the year, earlier few months back, the housing crisis was being credited to international students. That with so many international students coming, because I think it's always the season, right? At that point of time, there was a lot of international student numbers in play, right? All news articles, media channels are talking about, hey, 900,000 international students are coming to Canada, or they are already in Canada, or they've already been approved, that kind of news. That was automatically, projecting into everybody's head the fact that why so many people coming into Canada, what is that going to do with the immigration programs? What is that going to do with the housing crisis? What's that? Because the prices are rising, the cost of inflation is very, very high right now. So international students took the brunt of it, and certainly, international students were not the favor of the month. And then the immigration targets were going to be reduced, were going to be announced, and therefore, again, the public was quite not very keen that the immigration numbers go up. The government obviously listened to that. Now, within the Canadian population, and when I'm saying Canadian population, we are at 40 plus million right now, 40 million plus. It includes the permanent residents, it includes the citizens, it also includes the temporary residents who are currently in Canada. As of right now, as per the last update, the number of temporary residents in Canada, and trust me, they never get these numbers right. These numbers, we always come to know that they've missed out on certain numbers. So it was indicated as 2.2 million. I don't agree with this 2.2 million. I think the number is much higher. And also keep in mind that this number is dynamic, right? These temporary resident numbers, because people travel in and out of Canada, right? So this numbers is always going to be dynamic. But I think this 2.2 million is closer to 2.5 million people. Now, if it is 2.5 million residents who are there in Canada at this point of time, I would assume, again, it's an assumption because there is no data that I can get to validate what I'm saying. But I would assume that out of this 2.5 million people, majority would want to become permanent residents or would want to have some sort of permanent stay in Canada or permanent status in Canada. That obviously makes all the programs much more difficult to get for people who do not have a Canadian connection, who are outside Canada. Because it's 2.5 million people, and as I said, most of them would want to have permanent resident status. And because there are 2.5 million people means some of them are couples. So basically only one person would want to get into the application. Obviously there are a lot of children, so we have to reduce that number. But just for the sake of argument, even if we say 1.2, 1.4 million kind of people would want to become permanent residents along with their family, that's still a lot of number, does not equate to the permanent resident quotas for the year, which basically means as and how these numbers will keep increasing. Because mind you, each year more and more international students come to Canada. And as these international students come to Canada, the ones who are already in Canada, they are graduating, they are becoming, they're getting their work permit status. A lot of the work permit workers who are currently in Canada, they are going to be losing their status because their work permits will expire. We haven't heard about postgraduate work permit extensions for 2024. In my opinion, it may not happen. Don't see much happening there. In its entirety, it has created a lot of frustration. It has created fatigue. I think fatigue is the right word, right? I mean, you feel more encouraged, you feel more motivated when you see things moving, right? The draws are happening, people are getting through, people are getting confirmed, people are happy, they're talking about things, that they're talking about their success stories, they're talking about, okay, they made it to Canada, they lived here 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, now they bought a house, now they bought a car, now they're doing very well. So all these collective positivity is what creates the factor where you would say the charm is not fading, but it is absolutely increasing, or everybody wants to come to Canada. That is what the game was a couple of years back, when the first time Sean Fraser came out and announced the multi-year immigration levels plan, and the newspapers were plastered with headlines. Canada wants 1.2 million people, and I remember the Indian newspapers and the agents in India made out one-page advertisement saying 1.2 million, Canada is desperately in need of people. Everybody please come and apply, and so that you can all get a red carpet welcome. But that wasn't how it worked out. As of today, people inside Canada with all the credentials, with work experience in Canada, education in Canada, high IELTS scores, language skill scores, even they, at this point of time, are struggling to find a pathway that will help them become a permanent resident. But nothing really is happening for them. There are also people outside Canada who have been wanting to come to Canada, who have done everything possible they could technically, but are still on the fence. They can't really do anything about it. And that has what has created this feeling of frustration, this feeling of, the people are very antsy about it right now. But by and large, outside Canada, what has happened is politically, obviously, the ruling party, the government did not do itself any favors. They chose to pick a fight with India politically, and I'm not going to get into the debate of the right reasons or the wrong reasons or what was the background. That's not for me to talk about. But they did pick this stance, and they took this stance, and that created a big geopolitical issues. It continues as of right now. The political standoff continues. Even the most recent comment made by the trade minister of Canada was also in the sense that the trade talks at this point of time are on hold until the whole investigation on whatever the charges were or the allegations were that those are completed. With this environment that gets created, obviously we all know, right, how Indian media operates, right? They only need sensationalizing titles, sensationalizing headlines to sort of make it feel as if it's all doom and gloom in Canada. right? But obviously it's not that. I mean, a small riot, or riot is the wrong word, a small scuffle between two people in a mall is basically projected as a big huge riot that happened amongst big group of people. So those kind of projections. But what that has done is that has created a big negative image for the whole country. In Indian, I'm talking about the Indian diaspora, or the population, or public there, to the effect that so many people were worried that their children who are international students in Canada, are they safe? Are they not safe? Suddenly they started looking for options elsewhere. They started looking, instead of sending their children to Canada because they were worried that they might not be safe, they wanted to send their children to different countries, trying to sort of look at other options. Immigration wise, aren't you guys already fed up of getting those text messages from the agents in India, in Pakistan, in UAE, I don't know, in all the countries, wherever you might be, that who promise you PR to Canada in 6 months, right? I mean, aren't you fed up of seeing that? Haven't you had enough? And don't you sometimes feel, and asking those people, how in the world can you promise PR for anybody in 6 months when the government itself are not able to deliver 6 months in most cases? And on what basis? But that's what happens. It's a fatigue which is setting in a lot of cases. The negative sentiment, it is setting in a lot of cases. The frustration of not having to get through is creating in a lot of cases. And of course, then there is this ongoing trend on social media. Hey, I came to Canada, but I didn't like it. I want to go back. Well, go back, but there is a saying, right? किसी को मुकम्मल जहां नहीं मिलता. As in, you can never find complete paradise anywhere. You will always. There is no perfect country. There is no perfect city. There is no perfect place anywhere in the world. You will always have issues. You will always find reasons to like, dislike, get aggravated, find pleasure in different things, and we all are individuals. We all have individual exposure. We all have different backgrounds, different lifestyles, different choices, different perspectives. And my perspective will not necessarily be in agreement with yours, and yours not necessarily with mine, and it moves on to so many people. So people, when they make these videos, and people when they comment on Facebook, when they comment on different platforms, I don't like Canada and I'm going back. Well, obviously, a lot of you who are coming from very strong economic backgrounds, you have good salaries, good economic background, you have very strong financial support, and then after all that, you chose to come to Canada. You come here, you see the lifestyle can be quite a struggle in the beginning, at least. First 1 year, 2 years, it can be quite depressing. You're far away from your family, your friends. The festivals can be very depressing. I mean, right, there was Diwali very recently. It can be quite put you down because you miss your family, you miss your friends. And then the weather, obviously, the winters can make it a bit gloomy, and it all has an aggregating effect on your mental health, on your complete projection of the country that you were hoping and expecting versus what it is. And then obviously some of you choose to stay back, some of you choose to go back. Now, of the people who go back, let's say there are 10 in number. I'm just giving an example. Let's say there are 10 in number, but everything projects it as there are 10,000 in that number, which is not the fact. Because if there are those 10,000 who are leaving, trust me, there is another 1 million who is waiting in the queue to come in the minute these 10,000 leave. If they could exchange places, they would very happily do that. But it's the narrative that goes out, which makes it sound as if it's the worst place possible. If that was the case, why would so many want to come? If that was the case, why so many who do come choose to stay back? Of course, a lot of people also used Canada as a springboard to go to the US, right? This recent 10,000 H-1B workers. I mean, I don't expect all the H-1B workers to come to Canada. I don't expect them to stay put. The minute they will get something here, they will return back. Or the minute they will get something back in the US, they will return back. Similarly, if you are coming from a very strong financial background, very strong employment background, very strong economic background, once you come to Canada and you are not prepared and you do not understand the way taxation works, and if that is going to sort of push you back, and if that is going to sort of throw you off, then of course you're going to struggle. But all these small things, the negative sentiment, these people who want to go back and obviously are there all over social media, the current political situation, the fatigue which has been causing, and the whole difficulty level that has been created within the immigration programs, not because the programs are difficult, but because of the high demand versus the limited supply. All of this collectively has created this sentiment that Canada is not charming anymore. But then, if not Canada, then what? That is the question then, right? If you're looking to migrate, how many options do you have? You have Australia, you have New Zealand, you have Denmark, you have Germany, you have France, you have the US, you have England. I don't know, some other couple of other countries. Maybe you can throw into the hat. But of all these countries that I've just named, and maybe other couple that you're going to throw into the hat, how many are easy to get to? And how many will you find easy to finally settle and establish yourself? Not too many, to be very honest. US, absolutely not the easiest to get into. England, again, the same thing. Germany, language is a very, very big barrier. Same with France. If, of course, French is not your language already. Denmark, it's a Scandinavian country. If you have a problem with the winters here, hello, God help you if you go to Denmark. Where else are you going to sort of set up? Tell me Poland? I hope not. Australia, New Zealand. Now with Australia, New Zealand, they themselves, their immigration programs are making it much more difficult. There are so many people from Australia and New Zealand who are now choosing to come to Canada. And Canada is let's say these are always in competition: Canada, New Zealand, Australia. But the way the whole immigration programs of Canada are, they tend to fare better in terms of choice, in terms of how people come. And of course, the quotas are much more than what Australia and New Zealand has to offer. So this is the general sentiment at this point of time. You don't have to agree with me. I'm just relaying it out to you as how it is. And if you can get to any of these countries, and if that is your end goal, then by all means do. Other than that, I think Canada would continue for as long as because they do need people, and they will continue to have people come to Canada, and I hope that continues. Hey, of course, my business depends on it, right? But that's not the point. The point is that by and large, the sentiment is the Canadian charm fading. Fading primarily because of the reasons what I've talked about, but I don't see the rush going down anytime soon. So that, my friends, was today's presentation. Let me just get rid of this. Please, by all means, do connect with us on social media platforms. We are almost everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere. Just connect with us. And if Canada is on your mind to live, work, study, visit, then this is the channel you should have already subscribed to. I hope so, right? Right, let's take a look at the questions. Super chat, thank you. I'm enrolled in a 2-year program. I want to discontinue the program after 1 year and join another program. So when I apply for PGWP, will I get visa for 3 years or 1 year, considering that I will have only 1 degree at the end of 2 years? Well, what matters is when you are applying for PGWP is what you have completed. And if you have completed a 1-year program, then you will get a 1-year work permit. If you have completed, you should have a completion letter, right? So if you have completed a 2-year program, or if you have completed 2 separate 1-year programs, then you can expect to get a longer duration of work permit. But it will all depend as to what does your completion letter state. So if you are discontinuing your program after 1 year, but for completed 1 year, you do get a certificate or a diploma which says that you have completed a 1-year program. Then you do another program, and that is another 1-year program. And again, it says that you have completed 1-year certificate or program. So now you have 2 1-year programs, and that would still make you eligible to get a 3-year work permit. Okay. Okay. Harsh says, funny thing is they want to address housing, however, doesn't want to bring CEC draw for categories, especially STEM. CEC draws actually are included in all program draws. CEC also get the advantage of additional points for work experience. So yeah, I'm not really sure what the grievance there is. CEC specific draws were never a norm. They only were conducted during COVID because it was very easy for IRCC to meet their permanent residence quota by allowing people who are already inside Canada to apply. That was the intention, that was the objective, and that was objective achieved. At this point of time, they no longer have that intention or objective. At this point of time, their intention is only to bring in category based people who have the specific job or who have the specific work experience. And if indeed you have the specific work experience, specific of those priority occupation, and even if you're a federal skilled worker or if you're a CEC, you would get invited, considering your CRS score. So all this grievance about CEC draw, well, you have to understand, if you completed your education in Canada, you got extra points. If you completed your work experience in Canada because you're a CEC, you got extra points. Combined between these two itself, you have a huge advantage over anybody else who did not get it. And then because you are in Canada, you also have an advantage through the PNP draws, as in finding an employer is much more easier for you than for anybody who's outside Canada. So with these huge advantage, I'm not sure if you would always look at government's fault for not doing CEC draw. Well, of course, they can choose to conduct CEC draws. They can choose to conduct all program draws, but I'm sure their think tank or their operational segment or departments have a much better viewpoint of what and how they need to conduct their program. Okay, let's go back to the top to see how many questions. Okay. After submitting ITA received from health category, a child is born and I don't intend to add the child's father. He is not my husband or common law. How do I submit documentation to the situation? Okay. Well, if you are not married and if you're not in a cohabitating relationship, then you will have to explain this very, very carefully. But you can certainly add your child as part of your application. You will provide a birth certificate. You will provide the detailed information about about the father of the child and explain the relationship. IRCC can always come back and still insist upon you providing medicals and police clearance for the father. That could be a requirement. But in most cases, you should be able to add your child. But how IRCC chooses to review this aspect of the father is entirely up to them. I would assume that you might still need to provide a police clearance and a medical for the father. Visited UK for 2 months, but working full time with Indian company, wrote UK address in address history. India is job details under work and personal history. Country is India. Is LOE needed? Of course, LOE is needed. You provide the LOE. You show the fact that you were in UK, but you were working for a job or an employer with who was based in India. So as long as it is indicated in your UK address, as you have mentioned that you were in UK, so you should be fine. It should not be a problem with this. I obtained the PCC after leaving India using my previous passport, and I haven't visited India since, which validates the legitimacy of my PCC. Do I need to include an explanation letter for this? I usually do add a cover letter to the police clearance stating, if 6 months have already passed, stating that the police clearance was obtained outside the country, the person hasn't visited back to that country, and therefore the PCC should be considered valid. I got a new police certificate, but an accident happened and a little piece of the paper has got torn. Is it still valid? You can scan it, and as long as the scan covers the entire document, color scan, of course, then I think it should be fine. Does the police certificate have to be valid at the time of first landing in Canada? No, the police certificate needs to be valid at the time you submit your PR application. At the time of landing, your police certificate, in most cases, have already expired, right? So no, your police clearance does not have to be valid at the time of landing, but just at the time of submitting your application. What happens if an inland applicant gets the portal email asking if they are in Canada while they are on vacation outside Canada? Can we wait till we come back from vacation to reply? Well, as of right now, when you do receive your first email asking you to confirm if you are inside Canada or not, it now has, earlier there was no period of time that you had to reply back. Now you have to reply back in 7 days. So within 7 days, you need to reply back to this email and you need to let Canada know or IRCC know whether you're inside Canada or not. There is no harm if you're outside Canada in saying that you're outside Canada. People travel for all different reasons, and that's absolutely fine. So if you're outside Canada, in that response to that email, please mention that you're outside Canada. Also indicate the date you are planning to return back. Once you return back, then reply back to that email telling them that now you're back in Canada to please complete the processing of your application. Once they start processing again, they will then send you the portal request, whereby you can then upload your photograph, confirm your address, and then submit, following which you should receive your COPR. I have got a message about undelivered West report. I have not received the standard delivery post to my home, and I think this is about that. How do I confirm e-delivery to IRCC and OINP are delivered? Well, you can check online on your West account. Usually, the delivery to OINP and IRCC is electronic, and your West report not being delivered to you physically as through the post, that does not have any impact on your report itself. You can always download a digital copy or soft copy from the platform, and you don't have to really worry about whether Ontario and IRCC got it or not, as long as you did order a report to be delivered to them. Okay. Our passport has been stamped after ITA through EE. Will a subsequent rejection of PNP by the concerned province need to be disclosed to IRCC? Nope, you do not need to. Once you have already submitted your PR application, after that, if you are getting any rejection, you don't need to disclose anything to IRCC after that, in terms of your rejections or by a province or whatever that might be. We were just contacted from the Quebec immigration asking us to step forward for the values exam. Does this mean our application has been accepted and the value exam is the key to receive the CSQ? Well, I don't practice Quebec immigration. My knowledge is very, very limited, and I would not want to say anything which would not be correct. I absolutely am not following Quebec immigration at all, and therefore I can't really respond to this question. Can you advise on the best location within the post-ITA application system to upload explanation letter? Could it be in a specific section or included among client information? Well, any explanation letter you have to, or rather you should, include it with your client information. If it is specific to, for example, education, then you can add it to your education documents. If it is specific to your work experience, you can add it to your work experience document. If it is specific to your proof of funds, you add it to the proof of funds. But other than that, you can have a common LOE, and you can add it in your you can add that in your client information. I got ITA through Ontario Express Entry and my wife is expecting. Should inform Ontario for the newborn, or will it be enough to go through IRCC only? Once your baby is born, I would still suggest, because you are a nominee from Ontario, you should inform them that you have a baby. Ontario usually doesn't do anything about it. After that, obviously, you have to inform IRCC and then follow the guidelines that you get from IRCC. From IRCC, you will receive an application kit, which you will have to complete several forms, provide your child's birth certificate, passport, photographs, eventually medicals as well, pay the fees and submit all these documents, and your child will be added to your application. Congratulations, by the way. Why don't you mention Quebec? Because I don't practice Quebec immigration, and my knowledge, as I said earlier, is very limited, and I would hate to say something which I have little information or knowledge about. What kind of ADR we can get for greenhouse? My current employer just started not selling produce or eggs. Will I be eligible under the agriculture draw farm supervisor role? I can't tell you what kind of an ADR you will get. that's like, that's like saying how many centimeter of rain will you get in a desert, which usually doesn't get rain or may not get rain or something of that sort. No, bad example. Sorry. So in this case, no, I can't tell you what kind of an ADR you will get. It will all depend on your documentation. It will depend on the information you're providing. It will depend on the explanations you're providing. So you'll have to wait and see what kind of documentation application. But if you are working as a farm supervisor and your documentation, your experience letter states that you are getting paid for it, then I don't see any reason why you should have a problem. If IRCC has a doubt about your employment in terms of are you really even working for this employer, then that is a different thing altogether. Oh boy. I want to get in touch with you. I want to start the student process. Well, please, by all means, drop us an email on support@askkubeir.com for any commercial services that you wish to engage us for. Of course, we are licensed immigration consultants. We handle all kinds of immigration applications. And if you wish to book an appointment to discuss your questions, your queries, your profile, your concerns one-on-one, then this is the link. By all means, please book an appointment and we'll be happy to discuss this with you. I need to scoot off. My consultations are starting right now. I shall see you again next week, again this time. And until then, stay safe, take care, and stay forever hopeful.